fungi that can not only withstand radiation, but that can feed and thrive, synthesize from radiation an energy source, much like photosynthesis, but not photosynthesis. So in, roughly 1970s, Chernobyl was host to a number of 86, sorry. A number of fungi that they're growing, and one of them happened to be a common black mold of the Cladospores variety. And I believe there was Aspergillus and some others. But in 2018, I believe, NASA actually put this stuff on a satellite, sent it to space, and studied how well radiotrophic fungi would withstand and potentially thrive in the harsh radiation environment of space. And much like one of the petri dishes, right on the pedestal, in a similar method, that's what they did. They put it in a petri dish, they put it in space with a window exposed to space, and then when it came back, they took their data and found that it did thrive. And over time, the radiation would melanize through synthesis, radiosynthesis. It would melanize the fungi. It would turn darker. And this actually promoted even better absorption of radiation and thereby better radiosynthesis. So this crazy idea emerges: can we use radiotropic fungi as radiation shielding? It's cheap. It grows everywhere, like Caitlin said, in your homes. It's probably there now, unless you clean very well. But so that is part of what seeded some interest in this research. And even as recent as last year, this is a headline of a paper from July of 2022, performed at none other than Sandia National Labs right here in New Mexico. And what they did was, in a very systematic way, categorize the types of radiation that this same species that we're using, the Cladosporides, and another one, I'm not going to pronounce it, but in addition to Cladosporides, they studied how well these fungi would radiosynthesize. And I just think that's really cool that it's still a very active field of research, it's brand new, and there's some really interesting things that we don't understand about this fungus.
There's so much we don't understand. So this work kind of came from this. There's a few things. So Sasha Spachal, the artist that I was talking about, y'all should check out her work because it's amazing. She and I have been I've been working on a project with her that's called Micromythologies, and there's various iterations of this project. One of the iterations was that we sort of taught workshops all throughout 2020 and 2021, like around the world, on Zoom, obviously, that were kind of really trying to facilitate students thinking about forming new mythologies that would facilitate kind of this speculative future, and like how could we work within the model of fungi as these very, they thrive on decay, they're these ever-changing species, they totally evade, like I was talking about, all these boundaries, and they're pervasive and they're vital to every aspect of life on Earth, but how can we use those sort of their biological lifestyles as models for creating new mythologies that might lead us into a more sustainable future. And from that, we had this whole database of student stories that we put, that we called Spawn, and we applied to write a story for Antenna Magazine, the Journal of Nature and Visual Culture magazine, and we went about writing a speculative fiction sci-fi story, which is like totally not my wheelhouse. And we integrated some of our students' stories, some of the myths that they came up with, and it was a very crazy story, but it's kind of the way we sort of figured out how to intertwine everything is our main character Shiro, which is a white mass. It's Japanese for a white mass, and it's also sometimes what my serial networks are called. But our main character dies right away, and the whole story is set in the decomposition of her body. And as all of her body is being metabolized by many species, all of her memories are kind of escaping into the network, escaping into the world around her. And one of those stories was from a Belarusian artist, and this very sweet student, Hannah, and she had all these stories about living in Belarus and harvesting mushrooms near the exclusion zone with her family, and it was sort of through working with Hannah that we learned about the radiotropic fungi and kind of what spawned this whole idea that we started researching for the next year. And we were, very interested in this idea of the shielding capacity of these organisms, and so this is an ongoing project that we showed last year in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, but we created this whole fungarium. So there's pages of, there's a fungarium book like you would kind of see in like an herbarium, where you see the species information, and there's kind of, just information about where they grow and their lifestyles and when they were found.